Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners Agenda meeting. At this time, I will call on Commissioner Adams for the invocation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We can bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we come again just to say thank you. Thank you for bringing us through last year, bringing us to this year. Father, we ask you that you, as we conduct this meeting, that it be done decent and in order. Father, we ask that you touch each one of our hearts, that we speak in peace, and we speak out of love, knowing that this is for the citizens of Cumberland County. As we get ready to depart this place, when we leave, we'd ask you to put your angels, encamp your angels around us, and give us road mercy back to where we came. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. At this time, I will call on approval of the agenda. Madam Manager, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Chairman.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Unanimous.
And we will move on. County Manager, we will go on to other items.
Okay. So, my appointment with the county will end March 1st when the new county manager assumes his position. I should have said at the outset, I am a little bit under the weather, and in the interest of not sharing my germs with others, I'm going to wear my mask while I talk, as long as you can hear me. If you can't, let me know. Are you good?
See, look at what if she can hear you, we can all hear you.
All right. If at any time that becomes not the case, please let me know.
He's out of order.
I'm in rare form today. Y'all should have had this long meeting today. I'm here all day.
So with when my appointment ends and the new county manager assumes his position on March 1st, it's really important that our work in the meantime align with the priorities and expectations of the Board of Commissioners. In addition, we do have two new board members, although one is a returning board member, who may need some background on major projects that the county manager's office and county staff are working on. In November, during a conversation with the chairman and vice chairwoman at the time and former manager, we discussed the idea of having a 90-day priority setting session in early January, and with the expectation that a similar session be held once the new manager assumes his duties. The first goal, from our perspective, of the priority session is to provide status updates on the major projects the county manager's office is working on, and also set realistic expectations for what we think we can accomplish during the next 90 days. The second goal is for the board to have the opportunity to confirm that these are indeed your priorities, or redirect us to other priorities that we need to be working on between now and March 1st. Our expectation is that any change in priorities would come with a vote of the full Board of Commissioners. Just a note about the presentations, there are 13 different presentations. Please don't let that scare you. They've been combined into one, and so we should flow fairly smoothly. I will just introduce the speaker as they come up and not the subject. We've tried to keep these as short as possible. Our Assistant County Manager, Shutt, provided a template for departments to use in putting together the templates that was effective. We would ask that this kind of be the guidelines for us, so that at the end of each presentation, the board may ask questions, and what we would like to do is have Ms. Shutt record those questions on the large flip chart you see up there, and then address all the questions at the end, assuming that there is enough time. If there is not enough time, we will provide written responses as soon as we can to those questions. I do want you to think of the presentations as sort of a survey course or a college 101 course that you would take as a freshman versus an in-depth graduate course, because this is a very high-level overview of the topic. We fully recognize that additional information may be needed and can plan to bring that back at a future meeting. We are proposing the guidelines about the questions because you have another meeting at 4 o'clock this afternoon of the Industrial Facilities and Pollution Control Financing Authority, and so we have a hard stop at 4. So, Madam Chairwoman, do you want to ask the board if they're in agreement with how we proceed?
Does anybody have any questions about the format and how we will do this?
I like it, probably ought to do it every week.
No, we don't need to do that. No, just go ahead.
Okay. Following the presentations, we would ask the board to vote to confirm or change or give us additional direction about priorities. So we're going to start, these are roughly in order of our priority order. The board may have a different order. So the first thing is presentation of the preliminary fiscal year 22 fund balances, and our general manager for financial services, Vicki Evans, will present.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners. So the fiscal year 22 preliminary fund balances, preliminary because the audit is not yet complete. It's been a weird year, yes, to say the least. So I'm going to be presenting the fund balance of the General Revenue Fund and the Health Insurance Fund, and requesting one action later on in the, action to be taken at the January 17th meeting later on in the presentation. This slide is a fund balance summary of the general fund, which includes the general operating, school capital, and capital investment funds. Combining these funds is a requirement for statement presentation by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And as you can see, there are multiple fund balance categories that make up the combined fund balance of $280 million. The fund balance categories include non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Non-spendable year-end balances, they're not spendable resources. The restricted category includes revenue sources that are restricted by external sources like the state or federal. It does have flexibility for amounts in the committed, assigned, and unassigned categories. This occurs through policy, budget ordinances, or other actions the board takes throughout the year. On a later slide, we'll be focusing on the $75.7 million unassigned amount. The 22.77% of unassigned is well above the 12 to 15% range set by policy back in March. The general fund had a decrease of $25 million during the year. Through these, I'm going to focus on one highlight that occurred during the year that resulted in these changes. Primarily, that was due to a transfer of $62.5 million that went to the Capital Investment Fund during the year. The School Capital Fund had a fund balance increase of almost $5 million. That was primarily due to sales tax dollars received for fiscal year 22 after the June 30th year end. Those were not included in the expenditure budget for the schools, so they didn't expend those, so that went to fund balance. The Capital Investment Fund had an increase of $65.7 million, which included the $62.5 million transfer from the general fund, and there were also proceeds from a land sale that went into that. Back in March, the board adopted a new fund balance percentage range of 12 to 15% of expenditures. That calculation is shown on the slide. Using this base calculation per policy, the amount available that is above 15% is $31 million. So per policy, that $31 million could be transferred to the capital investment fund. However, there are some known impacts to general fund balance that are not currently addressed in the policy. There, two of the known with dollar amounts are the freed up capacity from the ARP revenue replacement that generated about $5 million in fiscal year 22. And also during fiscal year 22, there were major supply chain issues that resulted in delays in us either being able to complete projects or receive goods. And so for almost $5 million had to be reappropriated into fiscal year 23, and so we appropriated general fund balance for those expenditures. Other impacts to consider that are on the horizon include implementing the cost of the class and compensation study, as well as a potential one-time cost impact if the method of sales tax distribution is changed. So for those 4 reasons, staff and management are requesting a change to the fund balance policy as shown as number 1 on the slide, highlighted in yellow font. We're recommending that the board allow those adjustments be made to the calculation that results in transferring funds from the general fund to the capital investment fund. And because of the known cost impact of the study and the method of sales tax distribution determination, we're also recommending that the transfer of fund balance not be done this month, but instead wait until toward the end of the fiscal year when we have more information on the potential cost impact of those 2 items. And if you would agree, we would request and recommend that these 2 items be placed on the consent agenda of the January 17th Board of Commissioners meeting.
Commissioner Adams?
I guess I just have a question. So, and I guess we get interest in either one of the funds equally between the capital budget fund, the CIP, and the general fund?
It's allocated evenly, yes.
So why do half? Why don't we just defer it all and just do it one time? I mean, you're asking me to move some and then defer. Why don't we just defer moving anything, because then you got to move it back. Just defer until we get that comp study and just defer moving anything. We don't have to change the policy. We can just defer. Then you don't have to worry about amending or changing in one. You just defer everything and do it at one time, and then if we need to amend it, we can do it there. Does that make sense? That just makes, it's just easier to do. I mean, I don't know, Madam Chair, but it seems to me we just defer it all and then just wait. Because, I mean, unless I was going to get high interest in one than the other, then I'd say move it. But if I'm not, then there's no reason to do one. Just defer it all and do it all at one time.
Okay, so to answer your question about the interest, we pool our cash, and the allocation is, and the interest is allocated based on the amount in each fund. But the percentage is going to be the same. The interest earnings are going to be on the total, the allocation, and it's allocated out.
Right.
Okay.
So it's just as easy just to defer it all and do it one time than try to piecemeal it, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I would make a motion to, if that, from staff, if that makes sense, I'm talking to the manager and my finance people, to just defer it until June, what you got down there, June 15, 2023?
By then, yes.
Yeah, about it.
Okay.
That just makes,
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second to defer the funds until June 15th, 2023. All those in favor?
I've got a question. I asked my question.
Go ahead and ask your question.
I thought we just agreed
questions would be written down and addressed at the end. This is the only, I will say this is the only action item that we're requesting.
That's the only reason I was doing the action item.
Okay. I apologize, Madam Chair, and I raise my hand.
Okay, all those in favor?
Unanimous?
Okay, one last slide on fund balance. So I've included a slide on the health insurance fund because some of you may recall that last year in November of 2021, we were bracing ourselves for the potential of claims costs exceeding budget by $12 million. That was after claims amounts each month from July through September exceeded $1 million of budget and $1 million over the prior year amount as well. However, that did level off during the year, and by year end, the total hit to fund balance for the year was about $3 million. The fiscal year 2020 audit status. So Cherry Becker and staff are continuing to work on the audit and the financial report. We're on target to have it completed by the end of this week and submitted to the LGC, Local Government Commission, which is a requirement. Cherry Becker will be presenting the audit results and compliance items during the January 17th board meeting. Because we are actively working on the report and have not yet finalized it, there isn't enough time to get the document in a print version as we have traditionally done in the past. However, we do plan to have it on the website before the meeting on January 17th. And that concludes my presentation.
Our next,
Madam Manager?
our next presenter is Assistant County Manager for General Government and Stewardship, Brian Haney. And he will be talking about the class and compensation study.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
So as our interim manager said, I'm here to provide an update on the ongoing classification and compensation study. I was last before you at your December agenda session, so I will try not to reiterate too much of that conversation.
Thank you.
So you are aware that the county has been experiencing significant issues with both recruitment and retention, and that we have experienced higher than normal turnover and vacancy rates. A study, I'm sorry, that was the agenda. So you are aware again that the county has been experiencing these issues. A study was completed in early 2022 that confirmed a number of issues that our minimum salaries were no longer competitive with the market, the majority of employees are clustered at or near the minimum of their grades, and there is no mechanism to move people through their grades over the course of their careers. This has created significant compression issues where employees are paid similar salaries regardless of their experience with or outside of the county, and creates major challenges in recruiting and attracting qualified applicants to vacant positions, as we are limited in posting positions on ranges and hiring above the minimum salary in order to avoid creating equity issues with those existing employees. Additionally, the county's minimum salaries were adjusted to $15 an hour at the beginning of fiscal year 2022, meaning July of 21, which created significant compression issues among grades 55 through 61. These grades currently have the same minimum salary, and there are supervisors in these grades who earn the same salary as the employees they supervise. This is an issue that has not been addressed to date. The board included funding for a classification and compensation study in the current year's budget, and we put out an RFP and have engaged McGrath Human Resources Group to complete the study. Among the issues we are seeking to address in this study are to examine where county positions are graded compared to the market and make recommendations to make us more competitive, to assist us in creating a philosophy on where employees should be paid within their grades based on relevant experience in their position, and then to develop a mechanism for moving employees through their grade over the course of their careers based on that philosophy. I do want to be clear that the scope of what we are asking for in this study is significant. As noted earlier, our compensation hasn't kept up with the market. Most employees are at or near the minimum of their grades regardless of their experience, and the county's recruitment practices have been to post jobs at the minimum or on very limited ranges. Implementation of these recommendations will mean not only adjusting salaries of current employees, but changing the way we budget for positions going forward to allow for recruitment of experienced applicants. We also have a significant number of classifications and individual positions to account for. In the RFP, we noted that we have approximately 2,600 positions and 314 classification specifications within those positions. For many of these classifications, we have multiple positions where we use unique working titles and job descriptions, and these will need to be looked at as well. As such, we anticipate the cost of implementing this study, will be significant. We do recognize and agree that compensation is not the only thing that affects our retention and recruitment efforts, and that it is important to work to assess and improve our organizational culture to ensure Cumberland County is an organization where people want to work, grow, and spend their careers. I have engaged our Human Resources Director, Dominique Hall, to lead the effort to engage employees to assess and address our organizational culture. We also believe that providing competitive compensation must be combined with the expectation of accountability. Dominique will also be working with her staff to develop and implement a consistent countywide evaluation system that includes regular training for supervisors and department heads. This will take time to implement successfully, but we believe it is vital to establishing a culture of excellence in Cumberland County. We currently find ourselves in a critical situation where our compensation issues have become part of our organizational culture. This affects morale and our ability to recruit and retain employees. We have heard from employees who like their jobs and want to stay in Cumberland County, but they are being actively recruited by other organizations, and the salary difference is such that we do not have the ability to compete. We are concerned that not addressing compensation will have a significant negative impact on our organization and ultimately on our ability to carry out our mission and to provide high-quality services to our residents. So with that, I want to share what we've done so far and what lies ahead for the study. Again, we've hired McGrath Human Resources Group to complete this study. We held a kickoff with county management, budget, finance, and HR in November with the goal of making sure that all stakeholders are at the table. HR has provided McGrath with the data and reports they need to examine our positions and workforce. McGrath has also conducted interviews with each department head to get a sense of the challenges they're facing and make sure they understand what our positions do. Those meetings were completed before Christmas. The next steps in this process are to provide select employees in each position with position questionnaires to make sure McGrath has the most current and accurate information available regarding each position. Information will be going out to employees about this process this week with the questionnaires following shortly. McGrath will also engage comparable government and other organizations to conduct a market study and analyze the county's positions relative to comparable organizations and those to which we are frequently losing employees. Staff will work with McGrath to develop a new compensation philosophy for the county that seeks to address the issues I discussed earlier. The consultant will then provide recommendations for staff review and ultimately for presentation to the Board of Commissioners. As I have mentioned previously, our goal is to provide recommendations to the board for implementation in the upcoming fiscal year. In talking with our budget division, we understand budget numbers are needed around mid-April. We have been in conversation with the consultant to make sure they understand our budgetary needs, and they have expressed concerns that based on the sheer scope of what we are seeking in this study, it will not be possible to have exact budget numbers by mid-April. They do believe they will be able to provide a general number that can be used for budgetary purposes. We have discussed internally several options that could be employed to address this uncertainty. For example, and this is just one example, one option might be to use the general number for budgeting purposes, and then if that amount is less than the actual annual cost of implementation, to delay implementation several months to match available funding, such as implementing in September or October of this year rather than July. Again, this is an incredibly complex study, and the scope of what we're seeking is significant. We believe it is important that it is done right and to allow the process to provide the most accurate information possible as we seek to address our compensation challenges. As we move forward, we are committed to working with the consultant to move the process forward, and to keep you informed as appropriate and desired. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a question, I guess it goes on the board, since, we get trouble over there. Why is there not any input from the board prior to just a presentation to us? I would think that McGrath may want to talk to commissioners to see what, or, sound like, as to, our input, as to what our philosophy might be. We might be 7 different people. When you go through this whole study, you get to the commissioners, and that's my question. I guess input
Why is input not sought from the Board of Commissioners before the presentation?
from McGrath. Why doesn't McGrath talk to the board, I guess?
Any other
It'll make it
questions?
easy.
Commissioner Jones?
Do you know the range of particularly how many key positions? I noticed that, for instance, communications director was open for quite a while, so do you have key positions, how long they've been vacant, and how is that impacting the departments, whoever's the head positions?
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Our next presentation is on water supply development and will be given by General Manager for Environmental Services, Amanda Botter.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So the first phase in development of a Cumberland County water system is going to be developing a source water. And we are considering groundwater for the initial phase for source water development. Funding is being sought from all possible sources for source water development. These groundwater resources will be developed to supply drinking water to citizens with contaminated wells. We are currently working on a hydrogeologic framework, and we also applied for grant funding for a source water supply study. Our next steps through March 2023.
Amanda,
Yes, ma'am.
can you let them know where that's at?
Where,
Water source is at?
No, what part of the county? I mean, she just started talking about water sources.
I had just started talking about water sources, yes. And so where we're talking about water sources, we would have a focus on the southern portion of the county where the most contaminated wells are located.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry for
Oh,
interrupting.
you're good, you're good. So, looking at next steps through March 2023, we would be looking at an RFP for necessary property acquisitions, an RFQ for hydrogeologic services. We would look at those two things in tandem, and the timing of these steps may relate to the progress of our litigation with Comores. And we're also looking forward to notification of a grant status for water supply study in February. So, thank you. Are there any questions?
No questions.
Okay,
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess I do have a question, because everybody's wanting to know, because we've always talked about running this water to these 2 schools. Where are we on that? Just to have that answered, because people will want to know.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
The next item is the Crown Event Center. We have presented ad nauseum on this issue over the past 2 months. The slide is here to just confirm that it is one of our priorities that we are actively working on.
Thank you. We'll move on to landfill expansion.
Okay, so we have talked quite a bit about landfill expansion. As you have all been aware, inform landfill will actually, unless further action is taken, we're looking at closing the gates in 2030. The selected approach is to implement the temporary transfer station, it's a permanent transfer station, temporary transfer, and mine out the existing bale field for future landfill construction. Current status, the draft initial environmental justice report has been submitted to DEQ. We are currently in the process of implementing the public participation plan and are contacting stakeholders. And an RFP for transfer hauling and disposal will be issued. Next steps through March, we will continue the public engagement process. We have stakeholder meetings scheduled for the end of January and public information meetings scheduled for the last week in February. And we are working on an RFP for design build contractors for the transfer station. And we're also working on a DEQ permit for the new transfer station. This would be like a facility plan site permit. It wouldn't be a building permit, but permitting to comply with the requirements, with the state rules and requirements. Are there any questions?
seek emergency shelter during the time of a disaster, and they are unable to be able to enter shelter through the couple of shelters that we have. Is there any monies available to shelter them?
Commissioner Adams?
And I guess I do have, and this is just a yes or no when they get to it, because I've seen the work that the city's doing on their day shelter. Have they had any communication with us as to the day center? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, our chief of American Rescue Package, or what we fondly call ARP, and broadband.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
I like that. So I'm before you today to present a brief overview of the county's ARP projects. To give a brief background, in March of 2021, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan was signed into law. $362 billion of this was designated to coronavirus state and fiscal recovery funds, of which $65.2 million this was allocated to Cumberland County to be used to mitigate and recover from the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, and to be used, of course, in accordance with federal and state guidance. The final rule became effective in March of 2022, and of course, we have to adhere to North Carolina General Statute. Funds can be used to cover eligible expenses 2021 and December 31st, 2024, and all funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and expended by December 31st, 2026. Any remaining funds would be returned to the U.S. Department of Treasury. The next couple of slides outline the projects currently on the county's ARP project list and project budget ordinance. Items 1, 2, and 4, COVID-19 vaccinations, COVID-19 testing, and medical expenses are eligible expenses the county was able to reimburse due to their link to COVID. Item 3, physical plant changes to public facilities, is an item the county manager can requested the board to put on hold while a space needs study was conducted by Screech and Associates. $500,000 of item 5, rental assistance, was allocated to the board by the board to bridge the gap for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, also known as ERAP, being administered by County Department of Social Services. Item 6 was allocated to enter into a sub-award with Fayetteville Technical Community College. I'm sorry, guys, I have a retainer. It's hard to talk. To support their Hope, Opportunity, and Prosperity Through Education program, also referred to as the HOPE program, an adult learner program that provides accelerated training for high-demand skilled labor jobs. Item 7, affordable housing, allocates $10 million to affordable housing and also $2.7 million to assist in the development of the Robbins Meadow Permanent Supportive Housing Project that was just talked about. Item 8 provides funding for sewer infrastructure to support affordable housing. And item 9 supports safe drinking water. Item 10 is a broadband project, which I will speak about in a few minutes. And item 11, the provision of government services. This was for county public safety salaries and created freed up capacity. Item 12 is, of course, administrative expenses used to administer the program. With the Small Business Economic Assistance Program, the board approved 60 applications, approving $1.9 million in allocations. Item 14, the Nonprofit Assistance Program. This program launched December 6th of last year, and we are currently receiving applications. Currently, we've received 19 applications totaling $896,000 in requested funds. This is a rolling applications program. We have already begun processing applications and will be working diligently to bring recommendations to the ARP committee. The county, through an RFP process, has partnered with a vendor, Brightspeed, in the state of North Carolina's growing rural economies with access to technology grant, or the GREAT grant. Originally, the board allocated $1 million to fund the county's match for this program, but currently the estimated match has been reduced to around $294,000. Guidance was also released last week, informing counties and grant awardees to expect a release of a draft grant agreement for public review that will be released in the next 2 weeks. We are also looking forward to the spring, anticipating the launch of the Completing Access to Broadband Grant, or the CAP grant, which will further provide options in the extension of service within the county not addressed in the GREAT grant. The final item is a project to restore and rehire public sector staff to pre-pandemic levels. This is used to pay the expense for employees hired after March 3rd, 2021, and has currently been budgeted at $4.5 million, but this number will increase as we build further capacity. This project will allow us to have more flexibility when it comes to spending dollars for projects that would otherwise be eligible for ARP. But there's a time, of course, a time constraint of having to obligate funds by 2024 and spend by 2026 is a cumbersome process. So this will free up, take away the time constraint, and also allow us to not be held to some of the reporting requirements that goes along with ARPA funds. And just want to go show some of the, show the projects that are being administered through the capacity. You see the community paramedics program and narcan defibrillator program with Cape Fear Valley Health System, the White Flag agreement that was just talked to by Ms. Taylor, and also the Fayetteville State University Innovation Entrepreneurship Hub. The next steps, staff will continue to administer the small business program, continue to build strong relationships with the county small business community. We will continue to administer the nonprofit program. We will bring funding recommendations to the ARP committee, and we will continue to monitor the freed up capacity made possible by the restoration of pre-pandemic employment levels and bring recommendations to the board for that as well.
Are there any questions, Commissioner Adams?
Yeah. Commissioner Adams.
Sorry, I just did that.
She just looked at
Thank you for your presentation. I noticed in number 8 when you were discussing sewer infrastructure, for the money allocated for that. Since the former presentation, they stated that the Shaw Heights is on hold due to sewer issues. Is that money, or the question is, can this money be used for that? And in the event it already is being used for that, is it not enough? I'm trying to figure out why it's on hold. And like you said, Shaw, she said that it's because of sewer. So, do they need more money, or can this be used for that? That's my question.
Commissioner Adams?
Mine goes to the paramedic. We gave that money. What kind of reporting do we have back as to how it's being used, how the success, what do we deem success, how is it being worked? I just hear a lot of stuff in the community that it's not happening, that it is happening. I know Cape Fear Valley has it, but there ought to be some, I guess, because we have to basically account for all of these funds. So what mechanism do we have that is being used for that and is being, I guess, is how do we deem success? That would be my question.
I don't want to start talking while she's writing. No, you don't. I'm interested in how many paramedics they have that are in this program. some of the details about it. I want to know what hours they working, how many paramedics are in that program. Does it include all of them? To add on to what Commissioner Adams had to say. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we will move on.
Our budget and performance manager, Deborah Shaw, will now present on the sales tax distribution method.
You got the fun part.
Good afternoon, County Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
As you are aware, the Board of County Commissioners is authorized to determine annually the method of sales tax distribution. The two methods are per capita, which means the county and municipalities receive a share of the share of the sales tax in proportion to their respective populations, or ad valorem, which means the sales tax is distributed based on the tax levies within the district. Cumberland County has been on the per capita method with an agreement. This was due to the city of Fayetteville doing a number of large annexations in the 1990s. The original agreement, which had multiple extensions, was a 50-50 split, which ended in June 30th of 2018. A new 5-year agreement was arrived after months of negotiations with an expiration date of June the 30th of 2023. However, this new agreement was a 60-40 split, with the towns and municipalities receiving 60% of the gains, while Cumberland County received 40%. Cumberland County gave up 10% to be able to arrive at an agreement for all the citizens of Cumberland County. Very few large jurisdictions use the per capita method. Wake and Durham County uses per capita with the agreement in place. This is logical since most urban counties have large municipalities that grow with annexations. Per capita distribution tends to benefit municipalities, especially those annexing. The share of the county sales tax shrinks, but many of the county services are mandated to be available to all citizens without regard to where they live. Examples are social services, public health, the sheriff's office, detention center, and schools. The method of sales tax can be changed in April and effective 14 months later. This can be found in statute 105-472. The county has calculated the estimated impact of changing to ad valorem as the method for sales tax distribution. These numbers are based on FY22. And let's remember, sales tax was historically high in FY22. As you can see, Cumberland County would receive an increase of $7.6 million. The schools, approximately $1 million. The city of Fayetteville would have a loss of approximately $9.5 million. Fire districts, a $3.3 million increase. All the towns combined is a $3.9 million loss, with the town of Godwin, a range with the town of Godwin estimated at $13,000 to the town of Hope Mills, $1.8 million. These losses to the municipalities would not affect their FY24 budgets. It would not affect them until FY25. However, due to the end of the agreement, the county's loss in FY24 would be approximately $9.6 million. So what are the next steps? Prepare for a decision on the sales tax method. If the Board of Commissioners decides to change the sales tax distribution method, the vote must occur in April through a resolution. A certified copy of the resolution must also be delivered to the Secretary of the North Carolina Department of Revenue in Raleigh within 15 calendar days after its adoption. Or if the board decides to maintain a per capita distribution agreement, negotiate a new agreement with municipalities. Thank you.
Any questions? Commissioner Adams?
Commissioner Council.
Commissioner Council. Because I know this one over here got something to say. I don't know how we can do this, but I would like for, and I don't know how to phrase my question. I'd like for the duties and responsibilities of counties to be listed, all 13 of them. Is it 13 or 14? Anybody know? However many. All but one. Duties compared to municipalities. There's one thing that is always lost, is that counties' responsibilities do not change no matter what. And we have 20 years that I can count of losing money. That's as nice as I can say.
Commissioner Adams?
And I went back to this slide, because the very bottom one says the county's loss is gonna be 9.6. So if we lost, somebody's gaining. So I think that needs to be shown, that these municipalities in that 1 year that 9.6 is going somewhere. So they're gonna gain in that year. I mean, eventually, we're gonna go up, we showing all the losses that they have up there. I think it's important that we show that gain for that, at least for that 1 year. So they'll know how to budget. Thank you.
Sally. And if we win Avalon in 2024, we stand to lose, well, we will lose $9.6 million. The projects that are currently on the table for us right now, the projects that we are currently invested in, the shelter, mental health, everything that we're currently doing, what might we not be able to do in 2024? What's going to get pushed back? Because if we're 9.6 million, at a $9.6 million loss, something's not going to get done. We need to get Kleenex out and get started.
Any other questions?
You know, and Commissioner Fairclough and Commissioner Council were here. I think I came just as it was going, which I think people may not remember, and I know Sally was probably here, because I remember the manager. We've been doing per capita all of this time, even to the point of we cut all of our employees and our library stuff. I think that needs to be somewhere in there. We took that hit, and I remember our former manager almost cried when she had to rift some of those. Y'all were here. And so I think that's part of the, I don't know how you put that up there. That's not really a question, but they rifted a lot of people. Instead of going ad valorem way back then, they still took the hit, and I have to admire the county for doing that, and I think that just needs to be put out there. I don't think any other municipality took that rift like we did. It was during that era that all of that happened, and I remember. I came on just as it ended. I think Commissioner Council, Commissioner Fairclough, y'all were here?
So how have we been impacted by using the per capita?
Mm-hmm.
I said, show the historical impact on the county by staying with per capita.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Commissioner Jones?
I would like to know, if we do this resolution in April, what the pros and cons are. I don't know, maybe that's a question for Ms. Evans, or how would that impact our finances?
Any other questions?
don't put nothing to do with the budget. Madam Manager, keep us straight.
Ms. Evans is probably take care of that.
Thank you so much.
Next, we will have a presentation on an update of general fund major revenues for fiscal year '22. Fiscal year '23 by, it's '22, right?
22.
By our general manager for financial services, Vicki Evans, and our budget and performance manager, Deborah Shaw.
So Deborah and I are going to be taking turns addressing these major revenue sources. I'm going to be covering ad valorem and motor vehicle tax and tag, and Deborah will be covering the sales tax portion. So this slide, it shows you a picture of how each portion of ad valorem, sales tax, and motor vehicle tax and tag revenue make up the major revenues of the county. The portions are fairly consistent until fiscal years 21 and 22, when we believe the stimulus funding had an impact on these amounts being higher in those years. This page, it shows a summary of the past 5 years. Ad valorem has remained fairly steady and with an average increase of 1.72%. We went from $163 million in fiscal year 18 to almost $170 million in fiscal year 22. Motor vehicle tax and tag revenue increased by 6% over 5 years. That's an average of $1 million added each fiscal year between 18 and 22. However, remember, we only got the stimulus money in 21 and 22.
On sales tax, as you can see in fiscal year 2018, it was 41.8 million. In FY '22, it was 61.1 million. There's an annual average growth of 8%. This 8%, I believe, is skewed due to the FY '21 and '22 having historical growth with averages in those 2 years alone of 13%.
So this is a slide showing year-to-date amounts, where we're at this point in the fiscal year for the same revenues. So collecting the majority of ad valorem tax funds by the end of January is typical for the county, and so that number at 79% is normal for this time of the year, or for 6 months of collections. And with motor vehicle tax and tag collections to date, we're just slightly ahead of budget for the year. If we were at budget, that would be 34%, but we're right at 37. And so keep in mind, and I'll re-emphasize that the levels of 21 and 22 may not occur in 23 or 24.
For sales tax, we have collected $15.8 million in sales tax, which is 25% of the FY '23's annual budget. So what are the next steps? We will continue to monitor the revenues, project the FY '23 year-end amounts, prepare the FY 2024 budget presentation in May. We'll update the Board of County Commissioners if trends deviate from expectations, and we'll continue to have conversations with the North Carolina Local Government Budget Association on what they are seeing and what they're projecting. Any questions?
Commissioner Adams?
And if we go back to the slide before, so we've got down there, and I'm not going to worry about the ad valorem and the motor vehicle tax. The sales tax, where you have 3 months collection, it just makes it easier for me if I can see the historical trend. And I know because of the stimulus money, but if you can give me the 3 months in 2021, and then you give me this one for that first 3 months, because we know that in every one of them, we can see how it was skewed because of the stimulus money, or whether it was skewed by the stimulus money. And so those are numbers that you can get. You don't have to give them to me, but I think if you can look at it across the board, it makes a whole lot more sense. And I'll bet you those numbers are for 21 and 20 and 21 are probably much higher because of the stimulus money and stuff. She's smiling, so I guess. But I think that needs to be reflected, and everybody will get a better idea. just to say it's skewed, but that'll show you that it's skewed, I think.
Any other questions? Move on. All right. Next, Vicki will give a update on, or a presentation on our debt models, which is a key way that we budget for capital improvements.
Andrea is, thank you, Andrea, for handing those out.
That's good. Just take one.
So I'm just going to start off by providing a little bit of detail about the background of what led us to our point in time today on the models that you have in front of you. So work on prioritizing and securing funding for the county's future capital needs began in 2017 with the assistance of our financial advisors, DEC and Associates, who had done similar work with other North Carolina local governments. Our board adopted the Capital Investment Fund policy, and you have a copy of that in that handout, in April of 2018, and the very first debt model of the governmental funds was presented with an original fund balance of about $8 million in that capital investment fund. Since that time, debt takeout of $11 million for capital facility costs, $14 million for the Emergency Operations Center capital project, and $10 million for the FTCC Fire Training Center have all taken place. In addition, many facility improvements, technology projects, FTCC capital costs, a budgeted $2.5 million contribution to the Martin Luther King Jr. Park capital project, $450,000 budgeted contribution to the African American Disability Studies have been funded through the Capital Investment Fund. There continues to be a pay-go placeholder of $7.5 million in the model for the Civil War Museum as well. Two other debt models were developed separately from the original governmental model, one specific to the Crown Fund and another specific to the school capital for Cumberland County Schools. The Crown Fund incorporates fund balances of the county's food and beverage fund, Crown-specific occupancy tax fund, the Crown operating fund, and the Crown debt fund. The most recent update to the Crown Fund includes securing $80 million in debt takeout for the new Crown Event Center. The school capital model includes non-facility specific examples of debt issuances up to $10 million and the routine capital costs that are funded through lottery dollars and the school's portion of sales tax revenues. The Capital Investment Fund policy and summary of each model is at your table. On the upper right-hand corner of each model, the fiscal year 22 year-end fund balance has been circled. These are the finalized and pending preliminary audited amounts for fiscal year 22 and the budget amounts for fiscal year 23 through November 19th are all included and are on that green line. And so this presentation is an update. There are no changes expected over the next 3 months, but if you have any questions, you can let us know.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Next, our Engineering and Infrastructure Director, Jermaine Walker, will present, I'm sorry, my mouth is dry, on the governmental services complex.
This is number one, right?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So just a quick background on the project. So this project started because the board wanted to look at consolidation of the non-court-related functions, not including internal services, solid waste, DSS, and public health, consolidating those into a one-stop shop to better serve the county citizens and to also increase staff sufficiency. And so we started this process back in October 11 facilities, 27 departments, and these are the 9 major tasks that were identified for this process. And so currently, we've completed tasks 1 through 5, and we're in the process of conducting due diligence on the proposed site, and we're preparing a conceptual design for that site. Project is currently on schedule, and we conducted the geotechnical analysis December 12th. Going forward, the next steps would be to receive that comprehensive geotech report, request options on the site if the site is deemed buildable, and then based upon that, refine the program, develop design concept based upon that feedback, because the county is starting to get data in on hybrid work schedules, remote work, teleworking, and things like that, and then refine those cost estimates based upon the size of the building due to program changes. Any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead.
I can't ask anybody.
Anyone else?
All right. And our Assistant Manager for General Government and Stewardship, Brian Haney, will present on Rhodes Pond.
Hello again. So for those who may not be as familiar, quickly, Rhodes Pond is a 461-acre impoundment of the Black River located on US 301 near the county's northern border between Godwin and Falcon. Property is owned by the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, which acquired the property from NCDOT in 2009 and added a number of amenities, including a new boat ramp and floating docks, a floating fishing pier, and wildlife observation deck. A construction crew was also stationed at the site to perform maintenance and operations. In addition to the outdoor recreation that's available to citizens on the site, there is also a partnership with Fayetteville Cumberland Parks and Recreation, which has provided some on-site recreational programming, included guided canoe tours. I do want to correct that saying that recreational amenities managed by Parks and Recreation is not accurate. It is a limited involvement from Parks and Recreation to date. The pond was drained in 2013 following damage sustained from flooding due to Tropical Storm Andrea, and further issues arose from Hurricane Matthew in 2016. Funding was approved in 2017 for the Rhodes Pond Spillway and Impoundment Restoration Project, and a groundbreaking ceremony was held in May of 2021. Once completed, this project will allow for the pond to be filled again, reopening access to existing recreational amenities and providing the potential for additional recreational opportunities at the site. Wildlife anticipates the spillway will be completed next month, and that once completed, it will take some time to work through the inspections and approvals necessary for the pond to reopen to the public. Wildlife has estimated this process may take 2 to 3 months, and in addition to reopening the site to the public, they are planning to build a new fishing pier and reestablish the existing boat ramp before temperature gets warmer. We have also had discussions with Parks and Recreation and the mayors of Godwin and Falcon regarding the potential of a restored Rhodes Pond to be a regional attraction for recreation, and we are currently discussing what enhanced recreational opportunities may be possible at the site and what would be required to make that happen. Over the next several months, we will continue engaging with stakeholders regarding additional recreation opportunities at Rhodes Pond and what will be required in terms of space and funding to provide those opportunities. And once more information has been collected, we will come back to you with additional updates and any requests related to this project.
Thank you. Any questions?
At the end, just because most people don't know where Rhodes Pond is, and we do have the ability to do, show it up on this map, if we can show it on the screen doing the geo map, and let people know exactly what we're talking about, because it gets over there near Sampson, Harnett, and Cumberland, and most people don't know it's in the north. So when we talk about these projects, I think it's important for people to know where they're located, so if we can kind of stick that up at the end.
Anyone else?
Quick question, everybody knows the main problem, is there any local money associated with this? Answer.
Going on forward. Commissioner Jones?
I noticed that you stated that some of this was damage from natural resources. Has there been any consideration to think about, I know that sometimes they have funding from the ARP, question to Mr. Marshall. Sometimes for natural, disasters, there is money in the ARP to be used to build things like that, so if they would consider that.
We tell you about that fee.
Thank you.
This will remain state owned.
Next, we're going to show a list of internal and ongoing other priorities that we are actively working on. I will not read to you.
Commissioner Adams?
I do have, this is, and we can talk about it later, the opiate settlement money, and I think I talked to Ms. Skeens about this. I know we're moving forward because we designated some areas of pots of money for that. But if you put this out, there is so much more money coming down in opiate settlement, and they haven't come back to us to tell them how they want to use it. I know they did some RFPs. But the question is, do we hold some of this money to do a bigger project, or how do we, because I know there's at least two other settlements, and Rick can give us even better than that. So we pool this money, do we get bigger bang for our buck than what we are doing in the short term? So that would be because they haven't come back and told us what they did, they just kind of did that.
Commissioner Council?
To be linked, one portion of our homeless population to this opioid settlement money. What are we doing with it? Some people are homeless because of it. I don't know how to say it pretty.
Homeless and opiates.
Yeah.
And I would, just like as we talk about that 2024 budget, is whether we put a priority on mental health, is whether we send enough money to our LM, MCO, for us to get back what we need to be in this community. And I think, Madam Manager, and I think Ms. Kingsbury, is to stay on top of, I think we've got the crisis center that hadn't opened and Roxy that hadn't opened. And some of that is because of some issues with the state. And so we need to be able to help get those open. I think that's a big priority going forward, I think. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments, questions? Madam Manager?
I believe we have time to go through the list of questions. Again, we may not be able to answer those questions today, but we do want to leave ample time for the board to discuss its priorities. So how would you like to proceed?
We still have some things on the agenda, so. So I think, yes, ma'am.
We're not planning to cover anything else on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those were written updates.
Okay, so the board wants to, do you all want to go ahead and get some answers?
You want me to come and just read the questions and then the appropriate people answer? Or?
Yes, that would work.
Yes.
Why is input not sought from the Board of Commissioners before the McGrath presentation that's to come back?
Or can we get that?
Yes, and that is my oversight in the presentation. That is something we have discussed and is part of the process. It just was not included on that slide. So yes, we do want to have interviews with the commissioners to get your feedback on your philosophy of it.
All right, and then I think he'll probably have to come back on how many key positions have been vacant. And it was mentioned about the communications director position.
Yes, so which that one is very close to my heart, obviously, but in general, in terms of what is meant by key positions, we do have reports and information on vacancies and the length of time the positions have been vacant, and there may be caveats to that information, but that is something that we're reviewing and can provide to the board as well. In terms of why a position may have been vacant for a certain amount of time, there may be different reasons specific to the position. However, I would say as part of the presentation, the fact that we may not be competitive with the market in our grades and we're recruiting positions at or very close to the minimum, it is difficult in some cases to attract qualified applicants for these positions. And then that has definitely been an issue. And then in terms of its impact on departments, the vacancy rate, there are some departments that have no vacancies, but then there are others that have a very high vacancy rate. And in those cases, it does affect morale in terms of having to perform the work that is intended to be performed by more employees. And it also we have worked very hard to make sure that it does not, and I would applaud our employees for making sure that doesn't happen, but it does have the potential to affect service delivery.
Brian, I've been saying since I've been on the board, we have all of these vacancies, and they've been vacant for a long time. And people want to get paid. There are other incentives, people want to get paid. For the life of me, I still don't understand if we need to determine if a particular position is actually needed. If it's been vacant for years and years and years, and they've been making it, then they may not need it, and I don't see why we can't take that salary and distribute it elsewhere. Or if it's not needed, because we have that position is accounted for, that salary, right? I don't understand it. I could absolutely be missing something, but I don't understand if a position has been vacant for a long time, years, and we have that money, then why we just can't pull that position. Yes, ma'am.
We do plan to make that part of our budget process to review vacant positions, and we need to develop an evaluation system, but we are planning to make that part of the budget process.
Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, I think yours is a two-step process. First is you got to determine whether you need that position, because if you move the money,
Right.
and then you need to fill that position if it
Right.
comes along. So I think Madam Manager's right on that. Mine is not necessarily the comp study, but I did have this issue, and I've had this issue for a while. The other day, we opened up a position in the tax office, and it was open for one day. I don't know what that sends to the public when you open up a position for one day. That tells me you got somebody in mind that you want to have that job or whatever, but I just can't even fathom how we open up a position for one day. And you ain't got to answer that today. You might want to go back and look at it, but that just, and so I had this with the last manager. What's the policy? And if we don't have one, how do we determine what's done internally, what's done externally, how many days? But when you open up something for one day, it just sends the wrong message, I think. I don't even know how I would even, if I missed it, it would have been missed. But it came to, I don't know if everybody else saw that. It was open one day.
If I may, and I don't know that specific situation, however, this was something that has come up before. And my understanding is that the policy is one thing, and the policy requires, the written policy requires a minimum of 3 days for a post. However, we have had conversations with HR and with recruitment staff about what we consider to be appropriate, and my understanding is that all positions are recruited openly, not just internally. And we've talked about, I believe policies are in place to have a longer minimum period, but I do want to confirm before I tell you something that may not be accurate.
Commissioner Evans?
And I think those are some of the policies that we need to look at, even with that, because I think HR has to be more flexible. I mean, you're going to have to move fast to fill some of these positions. We can't, I told somebody I wouldn't want to be an HR director right now for anybody because of the way we've done it in the past of most people, which is apply for this, we interview you, come back, you do this, By that time, you're going to lose somebody. And so I think we just need to review and revise maybe some of those policies that we have. But that one day, I just couldn't even fathom that.
And that is a process that Dominique and I have spoken about, and that is in process to revise that policy as we speak.
Thank you.
All right, the next question moves into the water questions. Yeah, I typed them all up. Where are we on running water to the schools?
I can address that, Madam Chair. I know that we've had closed sessions with attorney-client matters discussing the issues with PwC in November or late October. The board, in closed session, directed that we approve the plan to move forward with seeking groundwater sources. We have never been able to get water from PwC, even for the schools. We fell back to our final position was just using the existing contract that we have for the 9 years at that time that was left on it to get water that way, and we got the same responses from PwC. That has been an ongoing issue. It is an issue in our litigation with the Moores, and I had advised, and the board has proceeded to have the former chair, back when he was chair, Adams, to notify the city that we regarded the inability to get a water from, even in our existing agreement with PwC, as a breach of the agreement. So I take all that to mean that PwC is off the table, and we are pursuing this as the presentation was made today in the southern end of the county to develop our own water sources.
So where are we in a nutshell? I hear you in the process, but
We were never able to get water for
right,
anything.
I know that, but is there any time frame in the,
As Ms. Botter pointed out in her presentation, that we have a time frame. She put it out for the next 3 months and through March. Certain things are going to be dependent on the progress of the litigation with the Moores.
Gotcha.
And I think within 3 months, we will know with definite certainty as to how much participation there may be from Comores. So that's why things are the way they are.
okay, thank you.
All right, so this is the question. Where are the funds for the RFQ fund for the landfill expansion coming from, since this is an enterprise fund?
Ms. Botter, can you address?
And I guess my first question was to define what the enterprise fund is. So, I mean, that wasn't in the question, but because I think citizens and the community needs to know that this is an enterprise fund and what that is.
Yeah, sure. So the enterprise fund is funded through availability fees. It's funded through tipping fees, through user fees.
So it's supposed to be self-sustaining.
It's self-sustaining.
And not for us to put money into it.
That's correct. And
It's enterprise, that's right.
so as we look at things like the transfer station, those are capital costs that will be funded through user fees, increases in user fees. So and the transfer station operation, the cost for that and disposal will be in addition to the current services provided. So as the purpose of getting these RFPs is to find out the impact of these costs to user fees in next year's budget.
So we paid it out of our funds and not out of the enterprise fund. I guess that's what I'm hearing.
We will pay out of the enterprise fund, but we're going to have to increase user fees to support those costs.
For everybody, the whole
for everybody. And so availability fees are assessed to all households in the county with the exception of Spring Lake. And we're also looking at increases for tipping fees. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the next topic was homelessness, and the question was, do we have any transitional housing?
Ms. Taylor, can you address the board?
So in response to that question, yes, the county owns and manage the Robbins Meadow transitional housing apartment complex that's located on the corner of Old Wilmington Road and Canterbury Court. And in fact, on that same parcel of land, that is where the new Robbins Meadow Permanent Supportive Housing Project will be constructed.
So that follows up my next question is, what's the turnover in that? If it's transition, people should be leaving. So how long is the stay? What's the, and in the last few years, what's how have we, and where, and I guess where have they gone? How have we helped them to get to the next place? Okay. Is there services provided in terms of banking, economics, jobs, whatever?
So with the Robbins Meadow Transitional Housing Program, that is funded through HUD's Continuum of Care program, and we use that funding for supportive services and operating costs. So program participants are allowed to stay. HUD allows us to allow them to stay up to 24 months. However, so we can serve more clients, we reduced it down to 12 months to allow them to stay up to 12 months. And while they're there, they receive case management services where the case manager will work with them to develop a goal plan to assist them with accessing permanent housing. They also access other services like mental health services that's needed. We help them with transportation needs, child care services, budgeting. We've asked agencies or financial institutions to come and provide financial literacy to our clients in the program. And so while they're in the program, they receive all these services, and the case manager will assist them with accessing these services and moving on into permanent housing. So they work with local landlords to help move the clients into permanent housing, especially when it gets close to their term.
I guess, can I have a follow-up?
Go ahead, because it's probably a question.
Well, I just, 12 months is just a short period of time. If I'm trying to get on my feet, 12 months, I don't understand why we went from 24 to 12, because that just seems to be putting a lot of stuff on people to do all of these services in a 12-month period of time. By the time I get moved in for a month, get settled, you're moving me out. If that's, and you know, if we can do that, that's fine, but I don't know that 12 months ought to be a strong point in terms of moving somebody. And then I guess after they leave, are we looking to see what happened to them after that within the next 12 to 24 months? Because if they become homeless again, we didn't really do our job. So after they leave, what do we do in terms of keeping up with them?
Well, we do follow up
So
on their progress. Like a few months, we are allowed to continue to provide them with services, like a 3 to 6 month follow-up on our program participants to ensure that they're able to maintain stability. Now, to answer your first question, now, we do make exceptions. We don't put them out once their 12 months come up. So we do work with them because of the challenge in finding permanent housing out in the community. So we work with them on that.
And that's just because, the data is, you got to have data. So, but, is this working? Is our transitional for the 12 months? If we don't know what happens to these people 12 months down the road, or 24 months down the road and they back couch surfing or homeless. So I think we need, even if we have to put some funds with it, is to be able to track them a little bit to make sure that what we're doing at the front end is working. Yeah, we might be able to get them out of our transition housing into somewhere with a landlord, but if rent starts to skyrocket or whatever, then what happens to them? Do they get first dibs to come back into our housing or what? I just think we've got to have, how do we deem success and all of that?
And we do track them through the homeless management information system. We do follow-ups. Many of them are successful shortly after 1 year, but then a couple years later, sometime, they resort back to homelessness because they're not able to maintain. And yes, they come back through the homeless service delivery system. Maybe if not through our program, but maybe through another program.
Ms. Taylor, my question is, 12 months is a short period of time, and you said that as it gets closer to that time, we already know that we have an issue with affordable housing, and rent has already skyrocketed. So what exceptions, what are some of the exceptions to the rule? Because the circumstances seem to be presenting itself in such a way that it would be challenging for someone who is not receiving assistance from HUD. So what qualifies them to be able to stay longer? And again, it seems as though circumstances are presented already where they would qualify to stay longer. So what about, again, I'm concerned about the turnover. And so my question would be, what is what qualifies them to stay longer, number one, and number two, I guess it goes back to the being able to turn over, because who can move right now?
Right.
So
What has helped us with being successful is the moment they enroll in our program, the case manager works with them and have them apply for housing within the first couple months. Apply for housing at the Housing Authority for public housing, and with projects like that's managed by United Management, so the lower income properties, because we know that the wait time can be anywhere from 6 to. We have been fortunate that many of them were able to enter into those programs, into those projects. Now, they may get denied initially, but we work with them, we appeal. We work with them through an appeal process and really negotiate with the director there to allow them to enter into their program.
So they don't automatically get on the HUD wait list because they are in transitional?
No, they have to apply.
They have to apply, so then they go on the wait list, and then they still can be denied. So if they're on the wait list and they're in Robin Meadows, is that a qualifying circumstance?
Oh, yeah, as long as they showed effort in working with the case manager in seeking,
But the wait list
doing
for HUD
housing
can be
search.
what? The wait list for,
It can be anywhere from 6 months to a year, just depending on, or longer. And so that is where we then have to rely on the private sector, the market, and then rely on other subsidies to help them with moving into those private units, privately owned units. So that is, nowadays it has been a little bit, challenging, especially trying to find decent housing where rents are affordable. And so we rely heavily on the Housing Authority projects, United Management projects. And matter of fact, we are working with trying to develop an MOU with both entities so that they give preference to our homeless population.
Commissioner Jones?
I just wanted to say, you did state that you all are working with Cumberland County CommuniCare, the homeless program, or were you speaking of CommuniCare Connections? Both of those?
Both, they're both partners.
Okay, because I am very familiar with both of their services, and I know that Commissioner Adams wanted to know about data. They both do have exclusive data where they keep all that information in-house per month through their directors over there doing a great job. So that might be something we want to consider when we have our homeless committee, that we invite their directors at that particular time to give us the data, but they do keep all of that when their case manager over there. They have an extra program.
Commissioner Fairclough?
Since we're asking follow-up questions that weren't on the board. I'm just curious, last month, we did away with campsites on county property and so forth. Do y'all have any information of what has become of the folks that were displaced? Have they relocated to another spot, or have they found any kind of housing? Do we know anything about what's happened to people who've been displaced by the recent war action?
I don't have current information, but I know that we have street outreach. The Continuing Care have street outreach through agencies that are working with those individuals, such as Communicare through the PATH program and other programs.
Commissioner Adams?
Actually, now, we didn't displace anybody. They were on city property. I just want them to know we didn't displace anybody. So they didn't come off our property in terms of displaced from
I
us.
thought they were library property.
We were ahead of the ballgame, I guess. We didn't want them to start camping there, and that's why we did the tags and everything. But they were across the street on the city property and everything. And so I think through the Manor Church and through the White Flag and all that, we've been able to do some of that. And it's my understanding that through Alliance, some people have actually been housed. They've actually been housed.
That's fantastic.
Attorney Warfield?
Some of the folks that were being displaced by the cities, actually, they weren't putting up tents, but they were using sleeping bags and camping under the portico and stuff just at night and stuff, but it was creating an issue. And there's some had moved tents into the area there at Cross Creek, which I still think was on city property, but it has, so far, the problem has been resolved better, in a better way than it could have, because as Commissioner Adams pointed out, there has been some outreach and some of those folks have gotten services.
And if I can add that we've utilized our homeless initiative funds that's contributed by both the city and the county to pay for hotel costs for some of those individuals.
Thank you.
All right, the next question was regarding the Kingdom Development Project in Spring Lake. It was not listed. So what can you tell us about that?
Okay, I think you're talking about the Elizabeth Street project in Spring Lake. That particular project is for the development of affordable housing, but targeting potential home buyers, low-income home buyers. So with that project, because it's funded through home funds, if Kingdom is not able to sell the units, then sell the units within 6 months, then it converts to rental housing. So they would rent it out to any household with incomes at or below 80% of the area median income.
So is it built or are they building?
No, they're building.
I couldn't figure out whether it was being in the process of being built or whether
It's currently being constructed. They're probably about 70% complete.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know.
It's being phased out. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Have we done anything new on advertising for bid opportunities?
Yes. So, of course, we utilize our normal route as far as posting through the vendor self-service in the state's procurement site, but we've also contacted contractors directly, both the Wooten Company and our staff, and emailed and discussed our project with them as far as the upcoming bids. And so I'm hoping that we will receive, I've spoken with, they have expressed their interest and intention to submit their bids.
Pastor Jermaine also, Mr. Walker.
And then we also distribute also distributing all of our projects through NC Hub and the Fayetteville Entrepreneurial Hub as well.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, if I may, we are working on an internal project to try to develop a process for better publicizing our event, our bids and reaching out to vendors. And so we hope to have that done before March 1st.
Thank you.
All right, the next question is, is there any money available for housing sex offenders during emergencies?
So through community development, we usually issue a request for proposal on an annual basis for the upcoming program year, and this is to fund various projects that would include housing and human service related activities. The only thing is with human services type activities, HUD puts a cap on how much we can expend on those type of activities. So for example, with our community development block grant, we average about $800,000 a year for that, and so we're only able to use up to 15% for public services or human services related activities. When you count for that and what we take out for match for our other programs, it leaves about $65,000 for us to fund public services project. And so we usually spread that out to about 2 or 3 agencies. So something like that can go towards any type of, for instance, homeless activities. And if you're referring to bricks and mortar type activities, we also set aside approximately $150,000 to $200,000 of our community development block grant to go towards the acquisition and construction of a public facility. And that can include something like that.
I was concerned with like White Flag or something of that nature where it's an emergency and someone may not be able to be around, children or something of that nature, and then what happens? Do they just not are unable to seek shelter because of their past, or is there something available? Because I get asked that question.
And we can consider using our homeless initiative funds to place them in a hotel or another designated site.
That was my question. Commissioner Fairclough, did you have a question? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Have we received any communication from the city on the Day Resource Center?
So the last communication was brought up during the last Homeless Advisory Committee meeting when they provided us with an update on the Day Resource Center, and I have not heard anything since.
So during that meeting, which was in November, they did not have any ask or seek any collaboration with the county for their day center, if that was your question, Commissioner.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next question is regarding Shaw Heights. Why is the Shaw Heights project on hold? And then can the money, the ARP money that's been allocated, be used for this?
The Shaw Heights Affordable Housing Project.
It is, it's not actually money or through D, it's actually through PWC, who wanted to annex. We've had these whole long conversations with the city and PWC, is that we were going to pay to run the sewer to Shaw Heights because of the people that were up there. But if we ran the sewer, PWC ran the sewer, then in order to tap on it, they were going to require each one of these people to annex into the city. And then further down the road is whether what we're looking at. Are we looking at commercial or residential? Because it's a difference as to the pipe that you run. But it wasn't the money part, because we had done that out of ARP. It was again, yes. Yeah, I just tried to get you, yeah. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, then our next question, we are moving into the ARP, and it was regarding the community paramedic program at Cape Fear Valley. What is the reporting mechanism?
And I would just say, don't answer that today, is if you can find that information out, Madam Manager. It's not a rhetorical question, but I don't think you can answer that today. I know what we have to do, but ours, I think, between the chairman and I was to, it's a little bit more in-depth you got to do. So we can go to the next question. If you just keep that one, Madam Manager. I don't think we need to have that discussion right now.
And then I kind of captured the questions or comments during the sales tax. We asked to list the duties of counties compared to municipalities to show where the $9.6 billion goes in FY '24 in terms of the municipalities.
Ms. Shaw, can you address that?
Yeah, come on, sit right beside me. Sit right here. I like the lady with the money. She said she got all that.
Okay, the first question was the list.
Yes, show where the $9.6 million that the counties would lose, where that would go in terms of the municipalities.
Okay.
I just wanted, I didn't necessarily have to have it today. I just need, I want it shown when you show the losses, that you show that there is a gain when they do it, if that makes, go back to, yeah, you can go back to, so some of these things I was asking was not necessarily had to do it right this minute. Right there. So when you got county losses, see, up at the top, we tell them what the loss is gonna be. So when we put county loss, I think we should have ABC as to what the gain is, because they're gonna gain for that year. So that's Madam Manager, that's all I was asking.
We'll provide that in writing.
Yeah, just show it on the, so that they can see it, because I know Hope Mills, and the city, and Spring Lake, in both of their board meetings this last couple of weeks, are asking us to delay this thing for 5 years, but, I think they need to see all the information and not just part of the information, so.
What all of the mayors would like us to delay. All of the mayors, all the municipalities.
You got it that. She woke up.
Yes, ma'am, Commissioner Council.
As the historian of this group,
Yes, ma'am.
we have been delaying for 20, more than really 20 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And I wonder how we have covered what we got covered. If we buckle now, I know it's terrible, but if we buckle now without asking the state to relieve us of some of our statutory duties, I would still be sitting here with my cane and rocking chair 20 years ago. And we still don't have enough money to cover our debt.
All right.
One more question.
Commissioner Fairclough.
Does anybody have any idea, or does anybody, when we'll actually start discussing this?
As soon as possible. Well, it has to be done by April.
But to your question, I do believe that we need to, even though we can't vote on it to April, for these new budgets, and again, it's not the next budget, it's the next budget, but I think that they need to have some idea of where we're going. I don't think we wait till April to make that decision, so I think we need to make it sooner than later. Whatever we do, I think we need to make it sooner than later.
And we need to give them time to prepare as well, which is why we need to do it sooner than later.
Is the press here today?
No, ma'am.
They're watching on TV.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Fairclough.
I'm just going to ask them, the last time we did this 5 years ago, I did a lot of little background, some of us went into the background of a lot of it. And probably, if you weren't here 5 years ago, you probably don't realize that everything in that formula is so interdependent. Those numbers, those cute little numbers that used to be up there were based on status quo. Now, if any one of the municipalities ups their tax rate or anything like that, it changes everything. So we probably need, before we get into this, we need a spreadsheet that we can play with to see what happens if municipality A ups theirs 2 cents, or we drop ours 2 cents, or this, that, or whatever happens, how these things interplay. And it could influence our decision on this if we go to have war. It doesn't have to be necessarily the doom and gloom that the mayors think it is, because I doubt if they have looked into how independent the formula is. And if I could ask for that, if you understand what I'm saying, I could even do it, so I know y'all can do it. A spreadsheet that will show exactly, that we can play with the numbers. That would be real beneficial to Commissioner Howard.
Commissioner Adams.
And I think, Marshall, when we do that, you might want to also have in there, because the last time we did the formula, a number of these, besides the city of Fayetteville, none of these municipalities have raised their tax rate in 30 years. So when was the last time they raised that tax rate? I'm not saying everybody need to raise taxes, but I know the city of Fayetteville did, but some of these other, that was one of the things, even the mayors back then, and most of the mayors on this, except for Spring Lake, because everybody in Spring Lake is new except for one person, they're the ones that's at a disadvantage. I think we have to educate more so than all the rest of them, because they were not there. And so they hear the doom and gloom, which is why I think we need to have what you're talking about, plus have what they were going to get for that year. I think it ends up being, even for Spring Lake, for that 1 year, they get $400,000. So,
In 23?
without the agreement. They'll get 480 in 24. In 24.
So Spring Lake would not be at a loss in 24?
None of them will probably be at a loss in 24. It's the years
Oh,
after
in
that.
25, right,
Because
right.
of the delay in implementation.
Right,
Right,
because
right,
they
right,
won't
right.
have the agreement for that year.
Right.
And so they'll get $400,000.
Well, that's the information that we need to know.
And how do we cover it? Where do we get the money from?
Well, Vicky told you this.
Vicky's gonna tell me that.
Yeah, Vicky's going to tell you all that. And Madam Manager, that's why we got her, because she got that finance background.
They're gonna find 9.6. You're gonna find 9.6.
So, all right, what's the next question?
One moment, Madam.
Well, we
Manager.
did suggest, when we presented the preliminary fund balance numbers, that we withhold the transfer to the capital improvements fund, investment fund, excuse me. And one of those reasons is to cover that shortfall.
Okay, Miss Sally.
Okay, so we got the other points that we'll provide back to, like the pros and cons on changing the method in April and the historical impact on the county. The next topics was Rhodes Pond, and you asked to show a map.
That map shows me. That shows me the map.
Well,
Where's 95? I think you need to let them see where 95 is and all of that stuff.
Yes, so this is Rhodes Pond, the property, this is 301. And this is Interstate 95. And then you can see this is the northern portion of the county connecting into Harnett County towards Dunn. And then here's our Cumberland Falcon down here.
Okay, thank you.
is there any local money associated with this project?
Yeah, so for this specific, the repair restoration project, the property is owned by Wildlife, is a state-funded project. They did receive, I think the original budget was somewhere around $9 million, and they received, I think, $6.7 million from FEMA, to answer the federal funding question.
We lost the FEMA money. FEMA pulled their money back. This is all come out of state money.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize. It is state funding. But in terms of local funding, again, it's owned by Wildlife, so any local funding would be required for enhancements beyond what Wildlife seeks to provide at that site. And that's the conversation currently being had with Parks and Recreation, with Godwin and Falcon, related to what might be the scope of what we would want to do. And then there are Parks and Recreation designated funding sources that could potentially fund all or a portion of those projects, but at this point, we don't have that scope.
Some of this predates some of them. So when the hurricane came through, at first FEMA was the one that was gonna give us the money, and then they stopped, and so the delegation actually went to the General Assembly and got the money to be able to do the spillway of the dam.
Is that the only roads pond question?
No, the final one was regarding ARP funding, if ARP funding is available for this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, based on the scope of what the county's involvement is, we do not anticipate that being a substantial amount of funding, but I think, or a substantial expense, but we will look at our recreation restricted funding sources and see what that looks like, and then come back to the board with any requests for funding. And if I may quickly, the question about posting the position for one day. I do want to clarify, because I have gotten information for that. The position was actually posted for 7 days. The email to employees went out towards the end of that posting. So the minimum amount of time that a position is posted in HR at this point is 7 days, and postings are external and internal.
So is that 7 days, as even if it's internally but not externally, does that count 7 days, or that's 7?
My understanding is that the posting is on our website. There are no internal only postings. They're all external and internal. However, with postings, we do, HR does engage, I believe, ITS to email the county employees regarding available positions, and that was the email that was sent very close, I guess, several days before, a day or two before it closed. But the posting itself was open, my understanding, for at least 7 days.
So we're not getting it when it's first posted? Is that what it sounds like?
I think that can vary. Is that?
We're currently short-staffed in recruitment, and that was just an oversight for them.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jones?
My question is, do you sometimes have just internal postings only?
Not since I've been here, no, ma'am.
Well, we might want to consider that, because we're talking about, promotions and more money. So if individuals are already here and they like being here, if they see the opportunity of perhaps, being able to move up, that's something we might want to consider.
I would say we do certainly encourage and want to make internal applicants aware of positions at this point, but we have also, the goal has been to make those advertisements aware beyond the organization as well, and that's how we have operated.
And that would just be a transfer, correct?
Correct. But we do actually, given our current practices, not to delve too deep back into the presentation, but given our practices, we do have a lot of circumstances where employees move from department to department seeking opportunities for growth in the organization. That is a common practice.
I was thinking, I guess, of the terms like, now the government they'll list it for just internal for a certain amount of time, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then if you don't get anything from that pool, then you open it to others, basically another, again, incentive for already working here. That's the retrospective.
We have not been doing that, no, ma'am.
That's how I was thinking of, maybe just try something.
Thank you, Brian.
That's all the questions.
There are no more questions. Any other? So we are not going to complete. That was just for informational purposes?
So the presentation was for informational purposes. The question is, are those your priorities for us between now and March 1st?
That's a whole lot.
See Jimmy's list?
That's a whole lot. I don't know what else you can do between now and March. Anybody comments?
I saw a whole lot more there, that's why I don't know what all of that stuff over there was, and they said, no more questions or whatever, but anyway.
I had typed them up, Chairman Adams, and we've gone through them.
What was the question?
Any other comments, was based upon our presentation? Is there anything, is this a direction that the board would like staff to be going between now and March 1st?
appreciate it.
Very good staff.
Very good.
Very
staff.
good staff.
And Madam,
Excellent, you're right, cut above excellent, put down there that at least one of us wants to give them a raise.
Commissioner Adams?
Good
let me see
leadership.
if I can find one.
Thank you.
And I do, and I think, Madam Manager, you're exactly right. And I hope everybody saw the email that I sent out on the announcement of the award for our finance and everything, because I think that's tremendous. I hope y'all got that email. It came to me as past chairman, so I think I distributed it to everybody and done that. And I think we ought to know that our librarian is now the state, I think she's the state president. State president. Well, yeah, I keep up with all this stuff.
That doesn't surprise me.
I keep up with all this stuff. I think we need to.
That does not surprise me.
Excellent.
But there's a question.
How did I find that? Oh, no, I don't have. No, I'm fine. I think they do an excellent job. You either trust your staff or you don't. I trust my staff. So.
Is this a direction, these projects up here, is this a direction that the board would like staff to continue between now and March 1st? Is there anything missing?
They don't need anything else to do.
I understand. I just want to make sure that the opportunity is there.
Okay.
So, Madam Manager, it seems, with the silence, it seems that, yes,
Yes, Richard.
Although it isn't specifically up there, can we add versus homeless strategic plan, mental health strategic plan as well? I mean, not just for homeless, but for people with mental health in Cumberland County as well. Can that just be added, like homeless strategic plan, or even somewhere else on the board, just a mental health strategic plan in general? Because of course we know that's happening in Cumberland County too, not just for homeless people.
who,
That's the only thing I would see that I'd like to.
Oh, you want
That's
a
already-
report on it?
Well, you know,
Yeah, because like you were stating, for Roxy has been closed, maybe just a plan and direction, and I know that Senator Val Applewhite has mentioned that she'd like to come meet with us to see the direction where we want to go so that she can help us on the state level for perhaps maybe things that could be brought back in.
I think Vicki and I both sit on the Alliance Health Board. That is a major, major initiative. I think we can deal with the Roxy and the Crisis Center, but I do believe that we need a longer-term strategic plan, and the new manager probably should be, along with Ms. Skeens and all of the assistant managers, looking at that long-term. I'm not trying to say put it off, but I think we should deal with the Roxy and the Crisis. If we can get those two open and put a priority on those, I think we can then move in March to that long strategic plan that you're talking about. I think that probably works better in terms of what we already have on there, but not to push it off to the side, but I think those are.
priority?
Who covers that, who deals with that?
What's that?
No, mental health.
What you mean?
Jay, Tony, them and all of them.
Oh, there's what we call JSAC, which is going to have a mental health component to it that deals with it, and we'll update on JSAC at some point. But
I
Madam,
understand that, but I guess what I'm trying to say is just as with homelessness, for people to understand where we plan on partnering with. I get all that with mental health, so I'm saying in retrospect, when people always say, what is the county justice, why we have a homeless committee, I would like for, in regards, and I think that's a good point to start what we're saying, but to emphasize that, so when people understand what we plan on doing, same with homeless, of course, we know
Right.
that we have a strategic plan, no doubt, of course, others are working on that, the city and everyone else. So I'm looking at the terms, speaking from that perspective, like Roxy is a start, of course, mental health is something, perspective, long words, but just making sure that that is up there so people know that, just, just like visually, people want to say, well, where's the plan at, what are you all doing? The same as, in the alignment, the same like we have for homeless strategy plan. It's something, of course, mental health, we're gonna have to deal with on the long term, but that way people know that mental health, strategic plan, that as we go along, they can see what pretentious, updates that we're doing. That's the retrospect from how I was looking at it. Because homelessness is good in that perspective, mental health, but again, individuals that may or may not have interest in that need to know these are the steps we're doing for others that have mental health.
I think that our homeless strategic plan, and I'll come back to you, our homeless strategic plan, as we talk about homelessness, we talk about everything that has to deal with homelessness, our veterans, our mental health, because as we go to build our shelter, all of that is composed in the aspect of the new shelter.
Right, but I'm looking at two different things. That's what I'm saying. That is specifically for homeless. So I'm stating, just like you said, for Roxy, a mental health strategic plan, so individuals that aren't homeless, that have mental health, people can understand that, oh, this is what the county's doing. So in other words, if you're not interested, I mean, you should be, but some people aren't interested in the homeless strategic plan, they should be able to look on there, or even on a website and say, oh, this is the perspective of what the county's doing, mental health, Roxy, and other things.
And I guess you said don't link it to just homelessness, because there are people who are in, that are in there and have mental health issues. And I think we've discussed, because I've always advocated that we don't send enough money up for mental health. So,
Separate from, I mean, we want to
Yeah.
have homeless, I'm not disputing that, but
Right.
separate from
Yeah.
mental health itself, we might not be homeless, but just certainly.
have mental health issues. That's right.
Madam Manager?
Two things. One is if it would satisfy the need to mention mental health as a priority issue, we're glad to add that to the list. We just, other than the items that you've mentioned during the meeting, those are the things that we would be able to accomplish, well, we will try to accomplish by March 1st. I do want to say a little, something else about strategic planning, if you don't mind. So we had talked about having this same session again when the new manager comes on board. It's looking like that session would be in early April. So we will work to find a date for that. The second part of the discussion is a strategic planning process, and we had tentatively talked about doing that in September, so that the manager has, I do think it's important that the new manager be involved in that process, and that would give him time to be familiar with county issues and be able to contribute. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Well, it looks like everybody agreed, so we will add that to there. That's definitely a personal priority of mine, mental health as well as homelessness, so.
I have just a comment. I've said this many times before. The state of North Carolina has really dropped the ball in two important areas that have impacted counties and county budgets. One is mental health, okay? And I know Glenn's been all over what's going on with mental health, with the alliance and all that kind of thing, but we used to have a working mental health center in our county. We used to have that here, and we don't have that anymore, but statewide, they have really dropped that ball. One big example is the Big Dix Park up in Raleigh has become a real nice asset to the people of Lake County. But many of those people who unfortunately had to be housed there are now homeless. So whatever their strategic plan is has not worked. The other important issue the state has dropped the ball, and the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners has done the study and presented it, is in education. The study will show, and if you look at it, it does show that the county has supplanted local funds with lottery funds. They've done all kinds of things wherein they have not maintained their level of effort, whereas the local counties have picked up the level of effort. So the state has dropped the ball in those two particular areas, and that needs to be out there. And as we struggle to put budgets together to put in mental health money and put in education money, it is to replace what the state has fallen down on. That's my stump speech.
Move to adjourn, Madam Chair.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor?